People of Reddit who work the day shift at non-haunted businesses and don't spend all your time in the woods. What's the creepiest thing you've experienced? While cutting lawns along this bike trail, me and a co-worker found a mostly decayed, severed from the knee down, leg. The cops were called, they questioned us and we never found out any more about what happened. Pretty creepy. I worked from 2 p.m. 11 p.m. at a gas station in one of the nicer cities around here and I had a gentleman look me in the eyes and ask if I'm enjoying my last day on earth. Walked away before I could answer. Well, not anymore. Power plant worker. During shutdown the large main steam valves tripped shut and the subsequent water steam hammer to the main steam lines was so intense the pipes literally jumped a few feet. I thought that the place was coming down around me, the sound and shaking was so violent. Like check my pants scary. We're talking about steam temp and pressure that can instantly flash the entire building if there's a branch, cooking everyone inside. Even a pinhole leak has the power to cut a person in half. Seriously scary crap when things don't go right. The summer after I graduated from high school, I left work early and went up to my parents' cabin in northern Michigan. Spent that night at the beach watching the sunset. Once the sun went down and it became nearly pitch black, no light pollution, I got to my car and started driving down the highway, M22. After about 10 seconds of being at speed, there was an older Tahoe, late 90s, that started riding my ass and flashing its high beams. So, I got up to about 60 in a 45. They were still on my ass. I pulled off to the side road that my parents' cabin is off of and they took the same turn. I thought this seemed weird cause there's only about 30-40 houses on the road. So I went all the way to the end, which is usually a dead end but leads to a maintenance area for the golf course nearby. Truck was still following me. At this point I was freaking out because if I pulled into the house they'd know where we lived and they were still following close by. I took a ton of random turns and the truck kept following every single turn for about 15 minutes. I finally had a chance to make a turn with traffic going through the intersection that gave me a few seconds of a head start. Pulled down a side street, went up 100 yards, turned off all of my lights and waited. Truck slowly drove by the perpendicular street and kept going. Booked it home, pulled my car around the side away from the main road, and pulled every curtain. For an 18-year-old, I was scared as heck that night. I worked for Radio Shack back in the late 90s and I was scheduled to open on a Saturday morning. I go in the door, lock up behind me and go to the back to get things ready, only to see my boss sitting at the chair in the back with his tie around his neck and tied up to an inventory rack with his pants around his ankles and he's dead with his still erect dong in his hands. That is the day I started drinking heavily. He came as he went. I often visit Walmart in the wee hours of the morning. One time I went in about 2 a.m. and noticed an elderly gentleman asleep on one of the mobility scooters at the entrance. When I left about 20 minutes later, he was still there. I thought it was a little odd no one from the store had woken him up, but whatever. Found out the next day he had died and spent the better part of a day on display as a corpse at the entrance to Walmart. A homeless guy tried to light my office on fire once. Pretty scary, but the cops rushed out and got him. I bet you were disappointed. I cocktail waited on a day shift at a small casino in Idaho for about 6 months during a bad time in my life. So basically everything, but especially the dude, not very old either, I'd guess mid to late 50s, who had a stroke at a nickel slot machine, crap himself, but dragged himself back up to keep playing while Ems was on the way. Was out at lunch in Midtown Atlanta with some co-workers. We sat out on the patio. There are some high-rise condos right across the street. Some guy jumped from his 40th floor balcony and splattered all over the roof of someone's Jetta. Everything went everywhere. The noise was pretty memorable as well. We noped out of there before ordering. It was a super silent ride back to work. One of my co-workers said he won't sit out on patios anymore when eating. Jesus Christ. I have to ask what it sounded like. Responded to a welfare check for an elderly woman who hadn't been seen in a few days. Found her hanged in a dirt basement wearing her wedding dress, still swaying slightly. Her tongue and eyes bulged from her face and her neck was stretched out. It was frickin' creepy. Always call for an assist on building searches. For safety, ya know, and old lady ghosts. Was working in an office pretty late, 100% sure I was the only one there. The AC system shuts down at like 7 PM, and until it does, you don't notice how much noise it was actually making. The office got extremely quiet, which is unsettling to begin with, and I had my office door closed. About 30 minutes later, I hear the muted voice of a little girl with a heavy British accent saying, "Mommy, I think he's in this one." Note, I live in the American South, so there is no good reason for a British child to be there. Almost crapped my pants as the door cracked ever so slightly, until a real live little girl popped her head in and says, "Nope, wrong one." Sorry, turns out, her American stepfather was still in the building. 18 years old and first time ever operating a dozer with an open air cab and roll cage. Was clearing trees out of a waterway on a farm. All of a sudden I'm knocked out. Come to and blood is running down my face into my lap. Dozer pushing up against a tree, just spinning tracks. My neck and head hurt. I thought I'd been shot or something. No idea. Nobody around me. Wasn't told how to shut off the dozer as it was an older 6C. You don't just turn the key off. Called my dad and he runs over and pulls the idle bar all the way down and it shuts off. We both are clueless as to what happens. Then he sees a branch behind my head that I must have drove through and pushed it forward pretty far, and it snapped back into the cab and hit me in the forehead. Never saw it or anything. Dang man, I had to read that twice to realize you weren't pinned between the tree and the dozer. Glad you're okay now. I once found the corpse of a dead coworker. Coworker didn't come into work one day. He didn't call. He was very reliable. Lived alone. Didn't have many friends outside of work. So I went over to his place and convinced his landlady to let me in. I found his dead body in his armchair in front of the TV. Heart attack. He'd been dead about 12 hours at that point. 25 years later and I still remember the grimace of pain permanently etched on his dead face like it was yesterday. Whoa, that's really sad. Good on you for checking on him though. If it weren't for you it could have been a long time before he was found. I used to work at a tanning salon, and one day while I was alone during my early morning shift I heard what sounded like a full-grown man running down the hallway. I looked and there was nothing. Just me. No machines were on yet. No one else in the building. I sat in the office until my co-worker arrived. When I was 17 and worked in retail as a cashier, I had a very old couple come through my line buying a wok. The husband, who was at least 85, started making conversation with me about the wok and asked if I liked Chinese food. Yeah, I like Chinese. Do you want to go out with me to get some Chinese? He winks at me. No sir. Oh, well. He looks a bit disappointed and turns to look at his wife, who is on the phone with someone. Would you at least like to come home with me and live in my basement? The rest of the transaction took place in terrified silence. His wife never said a word. I wonder to this day if he was trying to joke, because he sounded so sincere, or if he was suffering from dementia or something else that make him not realize how creepy that sounds to someone young enough to be your great-grandchild. I am a teacher of adult students, and one student of mine is kind of intense and creepy. Actually, she's based at another school, but specifically started attending classes at my school after meeting me. When I first started, she kept giving me welcome presents as I was new to the country. Just simple things like food, postcards and books, which was a nice idea, but it seemed a little excessive. She added me on social media and then got upset when I didn't reply to her constant messages. I told her that I don't really use social media. Anyway, I didn't see her for a few months and figured she'd just gone back to her own school or stopped studying or whatever, and was relieved that she'd clearly got bored of me. But then last week she comes in and gives me an envelope full of photos of me during lessons that she'd taken. Without me knowing, I was a little weirded out, to say the least. Sounds like you've got yourself a budding stalker. Right after the Virginia Tech shooting, my old office got an anonymous death threat in the mail, made of cut up magazine letters, calling out the name of the office and its owners. They called the cops and closed the office for a couple days. Turned out to be from an employee who had just been fired for a number of reasons. Don't know what happened to her. I'm going to take jail for 200 points. Hearing music that isn't actually playing from the store speakers. Quiet, but there. Given the crap I was dealing with at the time, I'm fine writing it off as a hallucinations delusion. This can definitely happen if you have unshielded cables running into an amplified speaker. My subwoofer used to play a Spanish radio station because of the cheap cable leading to it. Replaced the cable and never heard eerie quiet radio again. I work in a supermarket, early shift, and part of my job is changing the shelf labels for the price changes each day. Just this Wednesday gone I was putting new labels on a shelf of hand soap when, about 2 foot along the shelf from me, a bottle shot off and landed in the middle of the aisle. I looked along the aisle at my colleague and she just shrugs her shoulders and says happens all the time. I've never directly witnessed anything else but, being one of the first on the shop floor each day, I'm now questioning all the items that I see sitting in the aisles first thing and guessing I can't blame untidy customers for them all. There is currently a beaver living in my place of business. We can't get it out so we just learned to live with it. I now work with a beaver. I used to live in a small 2-bedroom apartment by myself. The lounge room was right outside my bedroom. One night I woke up and could hear something moving out there. I got up to check and the pedestal fan that was out there was on and slowly oscillating back and forth. At the time I convinced myself it was some sort of electrical fault as it was plugged into a board that turned all of the sockets off when I turned the main switch off, which was the TV. I went back to bed and ended up getting back to sleep. It was a few days later that I realized that fan had never been set to oscillate the whole time I owned it. I'm glad I didn't figure that out the same night. When I worked fast food, this old man came in, ordered a meal, and sat reading a book for over an hour. He had this horrible cough and when talked to random strangers, just seemed a bit off. Well, he went to the bathroom and I was busy, and when I looked for him again I thought he had left. A little bit later I went to use the bathroom and this old dude had crap all over the toilet seat and floor, and then rubbed pennies in it. The crap, from his hands, was all over the walls and sink. It was creepy because I had no idea if he had any contagious disease and we had to bleach the bathroom down. Also, why was he playing with his crap and pennies? Frick that guy. I'm a nurse and I used to work day shift at my old job. I was walking down the hallway with my computer on wheels, cow, to pass meds one afternoon. I was in between 2 patient rooms, not really close to either door, and far away from the nurse's station and kitchenette. I could hear one of the physical therapists talking to a patient in one of the rooms, but no one else was in the hallway. I was looking down at my papers to kind of get myself organized before going to see another patient. All of a sudden in my right ear, like someone was standing right behind me, I heard a female voice say I'm cold in kind of a jokey way, like someone would do a big shiver and rub their arms and say, "BRRRR, I'm cold." I turned around thinking it was my friend Brittany goofing on me, but there was no one there. There was no one in the hallway at all. At our old house the clock on my nightstand always jumped ahead by 5-minute increments every few days. I changed it out. Electric, battery powered. Any clock that was on my nightstand would do it. Watched our room to make sure no one was messing with me. It was just weird. Drove me batty more than anything that I could never tell the right time. Apparently your nightstand is moving closer to the speed of light than the rest of your room. Ask it what next week's winning lottery numbers are. You have been visited by Reverse Psychology Doggo. Please do not comment and do not subscribe to Updoot Reddit. Thank you for your attention. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.